This season of On the Contrary by IDR is supported by Hindustan Unilever Foundation, or HUF, a private foundation that supports and amplifies scalable solutions around India's diverse water challenges. You're listening to On the Contrary by IDR, a show featuring unlikely conversations on topics that affect our future. Hear differing perspectives from leaders and experts as they help us make sense of the most pressing issues of our time. Here's your host, Sneha Philip.
In India, which is one of the largest food-producing countries in the world, heavy rainfall and flood damaged 33.9 million hectares of its cropped area between 2015-16 and 2021-22. A similar area of cropped land was damaged due to droughts. And while these numbers are concerning when we consider food security, they're even more alarming for the Indian farmer, whose job is getting riskier by the day. These climate-induced risks and challenges are just the tip of the iceberg. How is the Indian farmer going to cope? How will Indian agriculture cope?
One of the things that we see in how agriculture is going to emerge is the pressure on the land is going to increase with the increasing populations.
The real situation of farmers in the field has not really changed. It's in fact gone from better to bad to worse now.
हमेशा प्रोडक्टिविटी को बढ़ाने के लिए क्रॉप की ज़्यादा से ज़्यादा केमिकल का यूसेज हो रहा है, तो उसका जो इम्पैक्ट है वो सॉइल के ऊपर बहुत हाईली हुआ है.
Those were the three sector experts I spoke with: Narendranath Damodaran, Swapna Sarangi, and Naseem Shaikh. They're going to help us understand how we got to where we are today and where we go from here. And all three of them are going to help us answer the question, what does the future of farming look like in India? First things first, we're going to try and understand the ground reality. And we're also going to unpack current trends that pose a risk for the future of Indian agriculture. Land holdings, for one, are becoming smaller and smaller, making it even more difficult for farmers to sustain themselves off their land. Naren is from Pradan, a non-profit that's been working on rural livelihoods since the 1980s. He tells us why smaller and fragmented land holdings pose a risk for the future of agriculture.
One of the things that we see in how agriculture is going to emerge is the pressure on the land is going to increase with the increasing populations. The pressure for the country to feed its nearly 1.6 billion, as it were, I think it's going to be the top number that we're going to hit at some point of time when you say 20, 30, 40, 50, etc. So we will be more than about 1.6 billion. So to provide adequate food and nutrition, etc., to those large number of people, I think that is the pressure on the land is increasing today. Especially at the household level, the pressure is further increasing because of intergenerationally the land size is going down and productivity is remaining where it is or even reducing. Lack of resources, mostly rain-fed agriculture.
As Naren explains, smaller land holdings are increasing the pressure on our land and subsequently on the farmers who work on it. The second expert I spoke to is Swapna Sarangi. She's a team leader at Foundation for Ecological Security, or FES, a non-profit that works on the conservation of nature and natural resources through the collective action of local communities. According to her, climate change and erratic weather patterns are making the problem worse for farmers. And over the years, overexploitation of natural resources, be it water, soil, or forests, has meant that yields have either plateaued or diminished. Swapna explains just why the depletion of these natural resources is a growing concern for farmers and what this means for India's agriculture.
When I go and interact with a farmer, a farmer who lives next to their forest fringe village or next to a natural protected area, that person is not really having a big piece of land. He's got a small piece of land. He's growing vegetables in some patch, it's growing paddy in some pockets, it's growing pulses in some pockets, because he thinks that these are things which is essential. because these are things which is coming to his plate, so he needs to grow that. So when I interact with him and I ask this question as to why do we need to keep this forest, he in his own wisdom tells me, I invest less if I have a good forest on say fertilizer or pesticides, because the forest takes care of that. There is a soil that comes from the forest is rich in nutrient. That's a farmer's knowledge. You don't really need to be a scientist to understand that. It's not really rocket science. The farming communities understand that if there is a upland forest, the carbon that transfers from the forest goes to your agriculture land. Then he looks around and say, because I invest less in pesticide, because you see there are dragonflies, there are butterflies, there are birds who are natural predator. So my farming is becoming less input oriented, and for that matter, whatever I'm getting, it's almost a profit. It's only my labor, and it's also the kind of input I provide only in the form of seeds or something like that. You walk down some 10 kilometers and come to neighboring township or a urban or peri-urban area. You ask the farmer the same question and you see the calculation. The investment in the same patch of land is so much that his return over the investment is becoming less. Because he's investing on soil, he's investing on manure, he's investing on pest to reduce the pest attack. So his investment has been growing more day by day. We took that entire opportunity from the farmers. Now we have taken the entire farming practice opportunity also from the farmers. Farmers are bound to buy fertilizers. Farmers are bound to buy pesticides, essentially because we kill these natural interlinkages. The farm, agriculture, interlinkage, that ecosystem interlinkage, the more we break, the more the investments will start coming to the farming land. The more the poorer the farmer would become. So these are things which is, what we call that in a very technical term, ecosystem services provided by forest or water bodies. Not visible, you can't really measure, but still the farming community is realized what is the important role played by the forest for the agriculture ecosystems.
As Swapna explains, agricultural productivity is closely linked to the quality of natural resources around the farmland. Traditionally, factors such as the amount of moisture in the soil, the availability of water, and other nutrients in the immediate environment played a key role in helping a farmer decide what crop to grow and when. Farmers exercised their agency and knowledge to decide what was best for their land. But overexploitation of resources over the years has led to the loss of a healthy ecosystem, which in turn is leading to reduced productivity and lower yields for farmers. And therefore, to improve productivity, farmers are resorting to poor cropping practices, such as the excessive use of fertilizers and pesticides, which only further aggravates the problem. Naseem, our third speaker, leads programs at Swayam Shikshan Prayog, or SSP, a Pune-based organization that focuses on women-led entrepreneurship and leadership in rural India. SSP has been working with women farmers in the drought-prone region of Marathwada in Maharashtra for many years. And Naseem explains just how these cropping practices pose a risk for the Indian farmer and the future of Indian agriculture.
पिछले 15 साल या 10 साल में मैं ये देख रही हूँ एग्रीकल्चर में कि 15 साल पहले एग्रीकल्चर में लोगों को फूड क्रॉप्स जैसे खाने पीने के जो क्रॉप्स हैं, जैसे हम पल्सेस हैं, वेजिटेबल्स हैं, ऑयल सीड्स ज़्यादा से अच्छे से कल्टीवेट होते थे. लेकिन पिछले 15 साल में ये दिख रहा है कि लोगों को लग रहा है कि पैसे के लिए हमको कैश क्रॉप्स ज़्यादा करना है, ज़्यादा से ज़्यादा कैश क्रॉप्स करना है. जैसे ऑनियन के पीछे भाग रहे हैं लोग, ग्रेप्स के पीछे भाग रहे हैं, शुगर कैन तो हाईली कल्टीवेट होता है. तो ये जो भी क्रॉप्स हैं वो फूड क्रॉप्स नहीं है. यस, वो पैसा देते हैं लेकिन उनके कल्टीवेशन के लिए बहुत पानी की रिक्वायरमेंट है. ये सारी जो प्रॉब्लम है अभी, जैसे मराठवाड़ा में जहाँ से मैं आ रही हूँ या जहाँ पे हमारे संस्था का काम हो रहा है, स्वयं शिक्षण प्रयोग महिलाओं के साथ काम कर रहे हैं, वो रीजन ही पानी के लिए सबसे ज़्यादा वनरेबल माना जाता है या ड्राउट प्रोन माना जाता है. तो ड्राउट प्रोन एरिया है जहाँ पे पानी की दिक्कत है. हर 3 साल के बाद एक लंबा ड्राउट होता है. तो तब भी फार्मर्स को लगता है कि हमको कैश क्रॉप लेना है और इनकम लेना है. और केमिकल का यूज़ तो हद से ज़्यादा बढ़ गया है. जैसे अभी किसान की सोचने की समझने की क्षमता ही खत्म हो चुकी है। उनको लग रहा है कि ज़मीन को हम जैसे एक मशीन की तरह देख रहे हैं कि इतना डालेंगे और इतना लेंगे, इस तरह से हो रहा है। तो हमेशा प्रोडक्टिविटी को बढ़ाने के लिए क्रॉप की ज़्यादा से ज़्यादा केमिकल का यूसेज हो रहा है, तो उसका जो इम्पैक्ट है वो सॉइल के ऊपर बहुत हाईली हुआ है। तो आज मुझे तो लगता है कि कुछ और दिन अगर निकल जाएंगे तो शायद हमारी सॉइल की फर्टिलिटी की जो कैपेसिटी है वो ही ख़त्म हो जाएगी।
Farmers have moved to cultivating cash crops rather than food crops in order to earn better incomes. The unrestricted use of chemicals to increase production, alongside the depletion of natural resources, doesn't bode well for India's farmers or our agricultural future. Like Naren, Swapna, and Naseem have pointed out, if we don't change our ways, it could be disastrous. So we have some understanding of where we are now and what perhaps is going wrong. But what lies ahead? Could evolving technologies provide a glimmer of hope? According to experts, agtech has been growing significantly, and this could potentially be a silver lining. Naren tells us about some of these emerging innovations.
Technology, ag tech as it is called, it's moving very fast. It's expanding, it is exploding, as one could say. Both production technologies in terms of hydroponics and greenhouses and genetically modified crops and new ways of practices. So that is one side. And second is the ag stack and the mobile telephone based technologies, the drones and artificial intelligence and weather forecasting. So there are so many of these kinds of support systems, support technologies, etc. coming in. So there's a lot of explosion happening. But it is getting limited to a certain set of people, and agriculture therefore taking an urban kind of urban looking agriculture, because all this new kind of produce happening more for the urban markets and not so much for the common people's market, which is much larger in number, much limited number of urban market versus very large number of people in the villages and small towns. Therefore, also, I think one fallout of this, which is being seen in smaller numbers, and if you don't really address this issue, it will become further exacerbated, is land consolidation and contract farming.
To give our listeners some context, contract farming refers to a system of agricultural production which is carried out under a contract between the farmer-producer and the buyer, who could be a private sector company or the landowner. Under the contract, the farmer has to provide an agricultural commodity of a specific quality in the quantity required by the buyer. In turn, the farmer has a guaranteed buyer. Now, the jury's still out about the pros and cons of contract farming. But what Naren is saying is that if access to agtech remains in the hands of a few, it can shift the focus of farming away from growing food crops and towards cultivating exotic produce and commercial cash crops for urban markets. This would shift the focus of farming from production for food and nutrition to production for profits. And doesn't this then take us back to the very same challenges of increasing pressure on land and natural resources that Naseem, Naren, and Swapna laid out for us? So then what does the future hold for farming in India? Let's go back to something that Naren just said, that agtech is only reaching a limited number of farmers. And perhaps that's where we may find some solutions. But to understand why the majority of farmers may not be able to capitalize on agtech, we need to understand just who the Indian farmer is. Naseem, Naren, and Swapna have all worked with farmers across the country and shed some light on the profile of the Indian farmer.
कहीं भी जाओ, या मराठवाड़ा में जाओ या महाराष्ट्र में जाओ या दुनिया के किसी भी कॉर्नर में जाओ, तो जैसे ही फार्मर बोलते हैं, किसान का नाम लेते हैं, तो एक आदमी की तस्वीर सबके आंखों में उधर आती है. लेकिन मैं जहाँ पे स्वयं शिक्षण प्रयोग काम कर रहा है, वहाँ पे हम ये देख रहे हैं कि खेती के सभी काम में, या हमारा जो ग्लोबल नेटवर्क है वायरो कमीशन का, तो हम यहाँ से लगभग 46 कंट्रीज़ तक हमारा नेटवर्क है. तो हम हर जगह ये देख रहे हैं कि खेती के सभी काम 80% से ज़्यादा काम महिलाएं करती हैं, बट वो कहीं भी किसान की प्रोफाइल में उनको देखा नहीं जाता है.
I am seeing more and more increasingly women, smallholder, rainfed villages. These are the farmers. Or are we going to look at this urban or urbanized, industrialized farmer, the big farmer, the jet-setting farmer? So you can have two ways of looking at the farmer. And my preference is that we look at a farmer as the traditional artisanal farmer, the small farmer. And let's have millions of them, because that is the only way we can actually bring these millions together out of poverty.
80% of our farmers are marginal or small farmers. Only hardly 20% farmers would own more than 5 acres of land. Our land fragmentation is happening every year. Every family, next generation coming up, then the land starts getting fragmented. So that's one big challenge that we anyway have. Our land holding are very, very small. Land size are pretty small, for which we have not been able to really get into a technology innovations or mechanization process that has not been really adopted by the farmers.
Swapna draws our attention to small and marginal farmers, those who have access to only 1 to 2 hectares of land to cultivate. And almost 80% of India's farmers fall into this category. And as Swapna goes on to say, these small and marginal farmers haven't really taken to agtech. This could be a problem, because it means that small and marginal farmers aren't leveraging the available technology to produce more. And additionally, depleting natural resources, pressure on land, the climate emergency, everything that we've spoken about is further aggravating the problem. Yields are low, as are farmer incomes. Can this situation be averted? According to Naren, it can.
I can see it happening, but we have to make it happen. I'm saying it doesn't automatically will happen. Depends on what we do from now to 2030. If you don't do anything, it can be a disaster. Each farming household only has 1 to 2 hectares of land. So there's a very small holdings. And these are, in fact, if well utilized, these are highly adequate to provide a very more than a decent kind of income to the household, provided we bring in many other changes. So each of these households can actually reach a lower middle class level and not necessarily, lie at the bottom of the pile. So therefore, if you pursue a trajectory of agriculture being far more dispersed than getting consolidated and becoming industrialized, it becomes artisanal and it remains the way it is today, distributed across millions of households, and making agriculture for each of these households more productive through collectivization, through introduction of technology, through various other capital and technology support and market linkages. It is possible through agriculture to bring in far more equality into our highly unequal society today. India is a smallholder agriculture economy. Keep it as a smallholder agriculture economy, but make a smallholder a prosperous farmer. I think our food systems have to be far more local. One, agriculture needs to be predominantly for the food, because agriculture was originally was meant for food. It should continue to be more food and not commercial and non-food, right? So that is one general submission I have. And through this integrated farming cluster approach, what we need to have is to help the families produce the various food and nutrition requirements the household has and the locality requires. And we need to have far more localization of production, processing and consumption, rather than looking at one production at one level and then, taking it all across the country to some other part. There would be certain crops, some exotic crops and some fruits and certain things that might need to move large distances just for the fun of it. But otherwise, the essential food and nutrition that any people require, it should be as closely available as possible.
Essentially, Naren is saying that there's strength in numbers. Collectivizing small and marginal farmers is key to strengthening our agrarian economy. But that's not all. In order to ensure that these farmers themselves don't go hungry, the entire production system needs a shake-up. We need to move away from large-scale production and supply chains towards processing and consuming food locally. This can help us meet domestic food requirements while also replenishing soil fertility and water sources. Now that may sound like a tall order, but we now have an understanding of what needs to happen to ensure agricultural productivity in the country while reducing risks and increasing incomes for farmers. The question is, how is any of this going to happen? And most importantly, who's going to make it happen? While the how is pretty complicated, the who is perhaps slightly easier to grasp. When it comes to agriculture in India, the government is one of the biggest actors. Whether it's drafting policies and implementing them, or mobilizing funds, very little can change without the government's involvement. However, Swapna highlights that there's much room for improvement and tells us what needs to change.
I think over a period of time, what I've seen is agriculture as a sector is getting less and less attention. Maybe if you look at the budget in the last 4-5 years, the amount that is invested in agriculture sector might be increasing, but if you see the percentage of investment from the total budget allocation, it's decreasing. So maybe we are thinking that we are becoming self-sufficient in producing some crops, we have become rich in some crops, and we have started exporting crops and all. But the real situation of farmers in the field has not really changed. It's in fact gone from better to bad to worse now. Essentially because in the last 70 years, even after independence, what we have not really figured out is the basic infrastructure that should have been built. But look at the progress that we have made in the last 70 years. Irrigation-wise, maximum potential created is 30%. That's on pen and paper. On the reality, if you see, that is the potential created. Actual land irrigated is not more than 5 to 10%. Similarly, if you look at soil-wise investment, nothing. No program has happened around soil. We have soil card, health cards and all that, but still the predominant idea is to follow the same model that we adopted after independence, the green revolution kind of thing. Keep on giving pesticides, keep on increasing the soil capability beyond the soil's actual capacity.
Naseem goes on to add that while we do have policies in place, there remains a gap in implementation.
पॉलिसी लेवल पे मुझे लगता है कि इंडिया में पॉलिसीज़ कम नहीं है, बहुत अच्छे पॉलिसीज़ हैं। जब पॉलिसीज़ के बारे में हम देखते हैं, पढ़ते हैं, तो उनके गोल, उनके ऑब्जेक्टिव्स बहुत ही क्लियर हैं। लेकिन जो बड़ी गैप मैं देखती हूँ मेरे पूरे 30 साल के करियर में, मैंने सेक्टर में जो देखा है वो ये है कि उसके इम्प्लीमेंटेशन गैप है। इम्प्लीमेंटेशन में वो ठीक से नहीं जाता है, हर एक की समझ उस तरह से नहीं होती है, तो उसके ऊपर काम होने की बहुत ज़रूरत है। और इकोसिस्टम में सबकी अकाउंटेबिलिटी और सबका कमिटमेंट लेने की ज़रूरत है। जैसे फाइनेंशियल इंस्टीट्यूट के जो प्रोसेसेस हैं या जो सिस्टम्स हैं, वो किस तरह से मार्जिनल फार्मर्स के लिए या मार्जिनल फार्मर्स के कलेक्टिव्स के लिए काम करेंगे। एक एग्जांपल मैं बताती हूँ, हमारा जो वीमेन फार्मर्स प्रोड्यूसर कंपनी हमने बनाए, हमको एक लेटर आया डिस्ट्रिक्ट ऑफिस से कि आप लोन लेने के लिए आपका एपीओ लोन ले सकता है इस प्रोग्राम के अंदर। फिर हम सब मिल के गए एपीओ डायरेक्टर्स, और जस्ट मैं उनके साथ थी क्योंकि उनको थोड़ा लिखने में वगैरह कुछ चाहिए। तो फिर हमने जब उनके साथ जाके बैठ के बात कर रहे थे तो उन्होंने बोला कि ठीक है, आपको तो लोन दे सकते हैं 10 लाख तक का, लेकिन इसमें कोलैटरल नहीं है। लेकिन कंडीशन ये है कि जो डायरेक्टर सिग्नेटरी है वो गवर्नमेंट के स्कीम्स को अवील नहीं कर सकते इंडिविजुअली, क्योंकि वो यहाँ पे कलेक्टिवाइजेशन में डायरेक्टर हैं। अब बहुत बड़ा चैलेंज है हमारे साथ, क्योंकि हम पहले ही अपने घरों में कन्विंस करके महिलाओं को आगे ला के इकट्ठा करके ये सारी प्रोसेस चला रहे हैं, और अगर वो डायरेक्टर जो सिग्नेटरी है उसके फैमिली को कोई गवर्नमेंट स्कीम नहीं ले सकते, तो उसके फैमिली तो अगेंस्ट हो जाएगी, तो फिर हम ये स्कीम नहीं ले सकते।
An FPO, or a farmer-producer organization, is an entity formed by farmers who grow their produce individually and come together to collectively sell their output. For small and marginal farmers, FPOs are an effective way to access investment, technology, inputs, and markets at a subsidized cost. But Naseem points out that it isn't as well thought out as it seems on paper, and that's evident from her example. If the director of the FPO chooses to avail a collateral-free government loan, then she can't access any other government schemes as an individual. This is a huge challenge because women have to overcome tremendous odds to reach a stage where they can take on positions like being the director of an FPO. And a clause that prevents them from accessing government schemes as individuals is likely to turn their families against the decision. It's counterproductive.
अब दूसरा जो मसला है कि फार्मर्स प्रोड्यूसर कंपनीज़ के लिए प्रोसेसिंग यूनिट्स, मतलब कुछ भी करने के लिए गवर्नमेंट की बहुत अच्छे स्कीम्स आ रहे हैं, लेकिन सब में इन्वेस्टमेंट है और हर इन्वेस्टमेंट इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर के ऊपर बड़ा है। लेकिन जब भी कोई बिजनेस करना है तो इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर के साथ साथ उसका जो डेली जो कैश फ्लो के लिए जो पैसा लगता है, रिवॉल्विंग फंड जिसको हम बोलते हैं, वो थोड़ा कम है। अब अर्ली स्टेज या ईयर 3 इयर्स में क्या सपोर्ट होना चाहिए, 3 to 5 इयर्स में फार्मर्स प्रोड्यूसर कंपनीज के क्या सपोर्ट होना चाहिए, वो अगर थोड़ा सा पॉलिसी लेवल पे कोई चेंजेस लाए। क्योंकि हम देखते हैं कि बच्चे को भी हम 6 मंथ्स में अलग फीडिंग होता है और फिर नेक्स्ट 1 ईयर में अलग फीडिंग होता है और फिर 5 इयर्स के बाद एक अलग फीडिंग होता है। तो मुझे लगता है कि एक पैकेजेस हम अगर बनाएंगे कि अर्ली स्टेज फार्मर्स कलेक्टिव्स के लिए क्या सपोर्ट सर्विसेज पॉलिसी से या प्रोग्राम से आएंगे, तो वो थोड़ा ज़्यादा है।
So we've spoken about the role that government and policy must play to ensure the future of farming in the country. And based on what we know, the focus needs to be on supporting small and marginal farmers so that they can leverage emerging ag tech better and increase their output and their incomes. And what about non-profits and other organizations that work on the ground with farmers? What can they do to enable some of these shifts? I asked all 3 of our guests to weigh in on this based on their experiences of working with farming communities. Naseem, who has worked extensively with women farmers in Marathwada, tells us that the sector must pay special attention to women farmers as they carry the torch for change, whether socially, economically, or environmentally.
जब भी पुरुष खेती के बारे में सोचते हैं तो ज़्यादा पैसे के बारे में सोचते हैं। जब भी पुरुष खेती के बारे में सोचते हैं तो कम काम कैसे होगा, कम मेहनत से ज़्यादा प्रॉफिट लेने के बारे में सोचते हैं। लेकिन जब महिलाएं सोचती हैं तो पहले वो अपने खाने के लिए सोचती है, कैसे पैसे की बचत होगी उसके बारे में सोचती है, या अपने जो ज़मीन है, पानी है, उसको किस तरह से जो जैसे हम बोलते हैं कि नेचुरल रिसोर्स की प्रोटेक्शन के बारे में, जैसे वो बच्चे के प्रोटेक्शन के बारे में सोचते हैं, सेम तरीके से वो नेचुरल रिसोर्सेज के बारे में भी सोचती है। तो ये जो पूरी सोच है वो बहुत डिफरेंस है। आज सबसे बड़ा मसला, मुझे तो लगता है कि ये सबसे बड़ा ग्लोबल क्वेश्चन बन गया है, ग्लोबल चैलेंज बन गया है, फूड इनसिक्योरिटी। तो जब भी महिलाएं सोचती है तो पहले फूड सिक्योरिटी के बारे में सोचती है और कैश फ्लो के बारे में सोचती है कि छोटे छोटे काम करके, छोटा छोटा क्रॉप्स लगा के, जैसे वेजिटेबल शॉर्ट साइकिल क्रॉप्स हैं, लेकिन वहाँ पे काम बहुत करना पड़ता है, हर वीक काम करना पड़ता है, हर 3 महीने में उसको फिर से रीप्लांटिंग करना पड़ता है, सोइंग करना पड़ता है। तो ये जो टाइम कंज्यूमिंग काम है वो मतलब आदमी लोग को अच्छे नहीं लगते, इसलिए उनको लगता है कि वन टाइम आज सोइंग करो, पानी देते रहो, फर्टिलाइज़र डालो और फिर एक साथ हार्वेस्टर लगा के हार्वेस्टिंग करो और फिर पैसा लेके आओ। तो ये डिफरेंस है आदमी और महिलाओं के बीच में। जैसे हमने जो डाइवर्सिफिकेशन करने की कोशिश की है, वो पहले तो हमने पानी के बारे में पहले सोचा है कि ऐसे क्रॉप्स जो कम पानी में आएंगे, उनकी वाटर रिक्वायरमेंट जैसे बोलते हैं वो कम होनी चाहिए। दूसरा प्रायोरिटी था हमारा कि फूड क्रॉप्स होने चाहिए। तीसरा प्रायोरिटी थी कि वो शॉर्ट साइकिल क्रॉप्स होने चाहिए कि जिससे क्लाइमेट के रिस्क को मैनेज करना ईजी हो जाए। तो ये तीनों प्रायोरिटी रख के जब हम ये देखते हैं तो हमको जो क्रॉप्स के ये मिले वो है पल्सेस, ऑयल सीड्स, वेजिटेबल्स। वेजिटेबल्स में भी लीफी वेजिटेबल्स हैं, फ्रूट वेजिटेबल्स हैं। तो ये सारे चीज़ें अभी हमारे महिलाएं कल्टीवेट कर रहे हैं। पहला वेजिटेबल से फूड सिक्योरिटी प्लस कैश फ्लो, सीरियल से उनकी फूड सिक्योरिटी प्लस एक अच्छा इनकम। अगर वो जैसे 1 एकड़ के बजाय 2-3 एकड़ में अगर लैंड ब्लैक ग्राम या ग्रीन ग्राम करते हैं तो वो सेल भी कर सकते हैं। तो जितना उनकी फैमिली के लिए चाहिए वो कल्टीवेट करके रखते हैं और जो सरप्लस क्रॉप्स हैं या जो सरप्लस प्रोडक्ट है वो मार्केट में सेल करते हैं। तो इससे वो बैलेंस करने।
One can't then argue with the fact that women play a key role in food production and ensuring food security. They must be at the center of any conversation or program about the future of farming in India. Swapna, speaking from her experience with FES, shares how participating in self-help groups or women's collectives has empowered women farmers to step up to the forefront.
Many women, after coming from that self-help groups meetings, getting exposed, getting to know the world, coming for different training programs, interacting with other actors, has started believing that they can do this. And there is a push also from the families saying you are entitled, you can go and do that. And there is a pull from the state also, giving the voice to women, giving agency to the women, investing on the women agencies. So both way, in some states, I think, or Odisha, or Andhra Pradesh, or Kerala, or Tamil Nadu, even to an extent West Bengal, in places where these women self-help groups were successful to an extent of coming together, doing some bit of a smaller enterprise, have now started looking this as a bigger opportunity. Because women were practically the farmers, just that they never had a land title in their name. But they were the one who were doing all other activity in the agriculture sector.
This means that nonprofits need to continue working with women farmers to truly reimagine our agricultural systems and processes. They must ensure that the efforts of women farmers are recognized and that they can avail their rights. Naren shares a slightly different vision for the role of the development sector in the agricultural ecosystem.
I think the civil society people, there's a lot of requirement for active facilitation and, maybe not very high, but, medium to high level human touch at the farmer level. So we need to have people at the cutting edge who are experts in agriculture and expert in technology, able to understand issues and respond to the local issues in a local way. I think that kind of support from the civil society will be important. And at some point of time, what we need is, once the system is set and running, then the facilitation, the training, the handholding component might reduce because the farmers themselves become expert and they get linked with the suppliers and with the markets and even with knowledge institutions. There are local KVKs and there are agriculture research institutions. So the farmer organizations are directly in touch with them. So a lot of things that the NGO used to provide in terms of knowledge, in terms of technology, in terms of new linkages, those gradually start getting established. At that point of time, the NGO might not need to be there, but these linkages are necessary. So those linkages need to be continuously nurtured and replenished. So with the NGOs, we do maintain an oversight, but we also see that once the systems are in place, then we don't need to be there all the time. The bank is there, the government linkages are there. There are various government programs. So setting up these linkages, is multi-stakeholder partnerships, etc. are very important.
It's clear from our conversation today that agriculture in India is in crisis. Climate change, the degradation of natural resources, and the poor implementation of policies are further exacerbating this. The move towards more productivity for markets and cash crops isn't helping our land or the farmers who cultivate it. But if we were to put the small and marginal farmer and the woman farmer at the front and center of our agricultural policies and programs, we could alter the course we're on and ensure equitable and inclusive growth, both for the sector and for farmers. Naseem reiterates that we're at the cusp of a change, and that what we have before us is an opportunity to build a new, more sustainable future for agriculture in India.
2050 में इंडिया एग्रीकल्चर सेक्टर ग्लोबली आगे ही होगा, लेकिन उसमें मार्जिनल फार्मर्स के कलेक्टिव्स आगे आएंगे और हमारा जो नेक्स्ट जनरेशन है, जिसको हम युवा पीढ़ी बोलते हैं या यूथ बोलते हैं, वो भी एग्रीकल्चर सेक्टर में इन्वॉल्व होंगे, लेकिन विथ स्किल्स एंड नॉलेज के साथ. तो अलग अलग जैसे इंजीनियरिंग पढ़ के, या तो जैसे पहले के फार्मर को हम विजुअलाइज करते हैं, तो पहले के फार्मर कम पढ़ाई करके, कोई टेक्निकल नॉलेज नहीं होते हुए, वो ट्रेडिशनल तरीके से एग्रीकल्चर का काम करते थे. आने वाली जो जनरेशन है वो स्किल और नॉलेज के साथ एग्रीकल्चर का काम करेंगे. बहुत बड़ा मौका है, क्योंकि हमारे देश में तो जिस तरह से पॉपुलेशन बढ़ रहा है या जिस तरह से हमारी नीड्स बढ़ रहे हैं, वो सिर्फ एग्रीकल्चर सेक्टर ही फुलफिल कर सकता है. उसके ऊपर ही हम सब कुछ, हमारा पूरा देश का जो इकोनॉमी है वो एग्रीकल्चर सेक्टर में है. तो हमारा जो इन्वेस्टमेंट होना चाहिए जो भी इन्वेस्टमेंट है वो एग्रीकल्चर सेक्टर में ज़्यादा होना चाहिए मुझे लगता है। लेकिन जो भी टेक्नोलॉजीज़ हम लाएंगे वो लोगों के सहायता के लिए लाएंगे, लेकिन टेक्नोलॉजी के लिए लोगों का यूज़ नहीं होना चाहिए, फार्मर्स का यूज़ नहीं होना चाहिए।
This episode of On the Contrary by IDR was produced by Saloni Meghani, Smarinita Shetty, Sneha Philip, and me, Shreya Adhikari, with additional support from Halima Ansari, production by Made in India. If you like our show, please subscribe and leave us a review wherever you get your podcasts from, so more people can find out about us. You can also email us on, write to us at idronline.org, or find us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, or LinkedIn. Thank you for listening and see you next week.